And for me, the heart of Harvard Law School is Socrates. The idea of discussion, the idea of process.
A video was leaked today depicting what appears to be a U.S. military helicopter firing on unarmed reporters.
12 million people have seen that video. You still want to tell me you think it's just a little website?
And so I wanted to start by asking each of you to consider for a moment, if you were to have the opportunity to participate in one of three discussions, a discussion about the film, a discussion about Assange, a discussion about secrecy, which of the three would you choose? Which room would you go into if there were three rooms? Just give it a thought for a moment.
So I think it would have been difficult to rewrite it if it were so connected to Hollywood. So if it were an independent film, I think that's something that would have been easier to sort of rewrite or write in a different manner. That's I mean, it's not answering the question, but it's still how I think.
I think the challenge is to think about how, considering that it's a Hollywood movie, how could we frame it in such a way that the challenges are still clear?
I know, but knowing Hollywood, it probably wouldn't have been produced.
Benker is so much the theorist of the institution dictating its own rhetoric. It's like they have to teach us that this security is okay. That's because otherwise you're on the other side. But yet, I don't know, that's the line that Schneier sets up between the institutional forces on one side and the distributed on the other. And Assange is clearly an agent of the distributed forces. And that's the question, which side are we on? Are we agents of the state as lawyers doing what we do? Or somehow are we the people to whom it's being done, fighting back?
Do we have to be in one or the other camp only? That's, to me, another deep question in this film, you know? Or in what Bruce says. Part of what's interesting about Assange, as people were saying, is that he's a hero and an anti-hero. And then it seems to me Snowden was inside the tent and stepped outside, and now he's definitively outside. I wonder if it's still possible to be both. If we all have a responsibility, as the trailer suggests, then does that mean that all of us who are part of the establishment must resign from it in order to discharge that responsibility?
The screenwriter the whole time was like, you know, I didn't want this to be a movie about Assange. I wanted this to be a movie about WikiLeaks, but it's clearly just a movie about Assange, right? It's clearly.
Well, also the movie. I mean, as Yochai Benker pointed out very well, the movie became this thing of you're either rooting for Assange or you're rooting for Daniel, who's the clear hero of the movie. Yeah. Whereas I felt the movie should have been WikiLeaks as an organization versus these other organizations, mostly the U.S. government, frankly. And that's the battle going on. But instead, the battle in the movie became Daniel versus Julian, which of course you can root for Daniel because it's from his perspective.
He doesn't deserve going to prison and being, nor is it something like wonderful. So it's sort of de-magnifying the issue. To what extent can we consider this in a more normal way and filter the emotion around it, which may be fueled by the vision that we have of the possibility of the control perspective and things like that. I'm struck by the fact that we always point to issues of principles and not to what concretely follows from the fact that these information are secret or are not secret. What difference, in a pragmatist way, the question, what difference does it make in the end, I haven't seen addressed.
Could you say a little more about what difference does it make in the end? What do you mean by that?
I first, of course, going to prison is a big difference, but by all means, I think is excessive for what has been done.
So let's take that as the transition to our main event here with two questions. What social, technical, scientific, discursive mechanisms need to be developed to work towards a new equilibrium between security and competing values or values in tension? Wow.
Yeah.
Are we running the risk of the public becoming too comfortable with the notion of constant surveillance and the idea that it's okay if they have nothing to hide? What are the extremes of such a society? Double wow. All right, those are good. Those are good. How about the second one first? What about this idea that we're going to be comfortable with massive surveillance? Just it's in the nature of the environment. It's what we grow up with. We're used to it. We have nothing to hide, so we have nothing to fear. That's what they're trying to tell?
I think that this idea that freedom stems from plurality allows to put together the negative and positive version of
because that's what I'm thinking is a lot of,
indeed.
and this is where the gender piece actually might come in for me, is it's like, for me the gender is about identity. Do I have freedom both to express my identity in the public sphere and freedom from persecution for that identity? And that's the negative and the positive piece that I hear in what you're saying.
I couldn't agree more with the pragmatic, as I see it, pragmatic idea of looking at the consequences, as Nicole suggested, although of course you don't know the consequences in advance, and so that's another big issue. But to me, this consequence of massive numbers of people accepting, unthinkingly accepting this new reality is worse than the killing of a source whose identity was disclosed by Snowden or Assange.
Can you repeat that?
In other words, just suggesting that when first it's a great your proposal that we think about the consequences instead of getting stuck in the sort of preliminary theoretical debates only. That's great. I totally agree. But I think we should define the search for consequences to include this problem, to include the idea that large numbers of people will accept a new reality without thinking about it and without.
But where I don't get you is how you can think that you can make a large people accept, because you will never be in that perspective. For me, it's beyond what one can think, unless you sort of think for others, which is then, so I don't understand.
Well, I'll just give you a trivial example. In the United States, large numbers of people have accepted the fact that the government is conducting surveillance on them.
I think that perhaps slightly different view that has emerged in our group, which could be a little bit more optimistic, I think, is we haven't seen it necessarily as a downward spiral, right, where you mentioned the law gets more and more restrictive. But the way we try to think about it is more as kind of an evolutionary path forward, where actually social learning happens. And it's kind of the optimist version of the same story, right, where potentially we are able, and we recognize as a society we have to develop better institutions that help us to address and figure out some of these really hard questions. So between openness and you know, security, or whatever the tensions and the opposing poles are of the things we're debating.
This is information the world needs to know. We need to crush these guys. Lifetime. If you want the truth, you should seek it out for yourself. That's what they're afraid of. You.